Hello, my name is Peter Schlemmer, and I would like to welcome you to the second customer keynote, which is about Tullow Oil and Accenture and the future proving of the journey to digital through SAP. Before I introduce you the speakers, let me point to a few organizational things. You can post questions on the agenda. And at the end of the presentation, we'll go through the questions and I will moderate accordingly. So very happy to have an interactive session at that as such. A few words on Tullow Oil. Tullow Oil is a multinational oil and gas exploration company, which is founded in Tullow Island and is headquartered in London. It's an independent oil and gas company with a particular focus on Africa and South America. And it's my pleasure to introduce a speaker, Richard Miller from Tullow Oil. He's the group financial controller, has more than 10 years experience of working within the group finance function of oil and gas companies. And he's responsible for all finance processes and systems and is the primary business sponsor for Tullow Oil ongoing digital transformation program. It's also very much my pleasure to introduce Nicola Bepp. She is managing director at Accenture, more than 22 years with Accenture with a focus on oil and gas. She specialized in SAP digital transformation, as well as cloud and delivery excellence. Thanks a lot for being there and sharing your insights, and it's all yours, please.
Fantastic, thank you, Peter. And good morning, everyone, and welcome. And many thanks to everyone on the call this morning for attending our presentation. And I'm going to start actually with 3 questions today. So what if you could move to a cloud-based ERP landscape to reduce cost and increase agility? And what if you could transform your corporate systems through a much better user experience with standard processes and improved data insights? And what if you could create a digital platform from which you could achieve some key transformation outcomes across your entire organization? Today, I'm really pleased to be joined by a long-standing client of Accenture, Tullow Oil, who have achieved just that. And Tullow really have been leading the way since the start of their transformation program in 2017 and have had SAP technology at the core. As Peter said, I'm Nicola Bepp. I lead our Accenture Resources SAP practice in the UK, and I'm also the client account lead at Tullow. I'm going to be presenting today with Richard. So Richard, a huge thank you for being here this morning and offering to share Tullow's SAP story. And I think maybe if we can start off with a bit more of an introduction to Tullow, an organization and its operations today, Richard.
Yeah, thanks, Nicola, and good morning, all. It's good to be here, albeit virtually. As sort of Peter introduced us, we're an independent oil and gas company. We've got assets across Africa and South America. Our flagship operated producing assets, Jubilee and 10, are based in Ghana, but we also have non-operated producing assets in Gabon and Côte d'Ivoire. We intend to focus much of our capital investing in these producing assets to sustain and grow this production base over the next 10 years. We do also have appraisal and exploration assets across South America and Africa, most notably in Guyana and Kenya. We now have about 350 employees. These are mostly located in Ghana and London, but this is obviously down by about 50% over the past 18 months. As with many oil and gas companies in the industry, we are very focused on cost and see technology across operational and back office functions playing a key role in further reducing our cost base and helping to underpin operational performance.
You can just move to the next slide, please. Fantastic, thank you. So Accenture has been working as an implementation partner with Tullow since around 2012. And actually we supported the initial SAP ECC6 implementation at Tullow. And since then I've provided application management services and consulting support and support from our delivery centers in India along with SAP and Avanade, and have helped shape and develop Tullow's SAP journey. And actually in 2019, Tullow launched a new digital transformation program. And Richard, maybe you can give us a little bit of background, because that was one of the starting points for the journey that we're going to talk to today. A little bit of background on the digital initiative at Tullow and how you looked at modernizing some of your corporate business systems along with SAP.
Yeah, sure. I mean, our initial implementation of SAP ECC6 was driven by the need to enhance our process and control environment, following a period of rapid growth for the company from a micro cap into a FTSE 100 business. Our digital journey since then has accelerated and then decelerated, like many in the industry, due to the booms and busts with oil price cycles and the associated capital available. Whilst we greatly improved the control and process environment for both finance and supply chain functions through the implementation of SAP ECC6, the wider business did see little benefit of investing in this solution, often lamenting complex user interfaces, slow processing times due to the need for manual back office interaction, and the frequent need for data reconciliation. As such, as Nicola mentioned, we embarked on a group-wide digital initiative. This covered everything from production operations, so sort of real-time production reporting from the FPSOs and various metering points, to geoscience, to the back office functions, which we'll cover in this conversation. We set out really to greatly enhance the business's experience of the core back office, HR, supply chain and finance processes, with a real focus on better user experience, really to enhance process compliance. So, getting people to make sure that they raised POs on time or owned their data from an HR perspective. As well as process compliance, this really enabled faster decision-making. Core to this journey was our ultimate goal of wanting to move to the SaaS version of SAP, which we see will offer a flexible and sustainable platform for Tullow as a business point forwards. We've changed a lot in the last 10 years since I've been at Tullow, from a FTSE 100 company to a micro cap back into the FTSE 250 as we've been on our journey with oil price and production. So it is really important that we do have a flexible and sustainable model point forwards. As a result, we do have a real impetus point forwards on implementing the standard vanilla out of the box SAP solution, which is difficult to do, but it's what we believe is the right thing for us.
Thanks, Richard. If you go to the next slide, and I think this is a great point to talk a little bit more around the journey of change, because since that initial digital strategic direction was set, Tullow's been on a significant transformation journey. And I think one of the first parts to that was actually a successful move from SAP perspective and the wider application landscape to Azure, to Microsoft's public cloud in 2018. And then it went on for an implementation of SAP Concur for expense management. This was then followed by actually the oil and gas industry's first S4 brownfield conversion, and then shortly after an SAP SuccessFactors and Fieldglass implementation, both of which were delivered in 2019. And all parts of this journey really, as we'll hear about as we go through the presentation this morning, have really created that modern foundation that have allowed Tullow to continue to build and develop on top of. Richard, I'm sure there are many people in the audience that are sitting there and thinking and considering an S/4HANA move and whether to do greenfield, brownfield, and maybe it'd be really helpful if you can reflect perhaps on Tullow's decision around the S4 brownfield conversion, please.
Sure. So the core focus of our digital transformation was a better experience and use case for the wider business. As such, we wanted to pursue the quickest and most efficient way of delivering these benefits. We knew that much of this use case would be delivered by subsequent projects, such as Fieldglass, SuccessFactors, and also Concur, that you can see sort of outlined on this timetable. Therefore, working with Accenture, we landed on a non-disruptive brownfield conversion to S4. This fulfilled much of those criteria, essentially enabling S4 to become the foundation of our digital journey point forwards.
And if I just carry on around the journey timeline, I know from a HR platform perspective, Richard, there were several drivers for for deciding to implement a centralized HR system. Maybe you can give a little bit of context from a business and HR perspective around the selection of SAP SuccessFactors and Fieldglass and some of the business problems that you were looking to tackle and resolve.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, like probably many, I mean, our HR process was spread across numerous systems, spreadsheets, and sort of self-built SharePoint processes. Processes were inconsistent across locations. They were very manual, both for the business and HR to interact with. This led to poor quality and control. And obviously, with the increased focus on GDPR, I suppose we needed to change something. Also, from a contingent workforce perspective, we were also in the process of implementing a managed service provider to consolidate our management of our contingent workers. Whilst this service provider would have supported us through various platforms, we were certainly able to leverage off their experience with Fieldglass. Both SuccessFactors and Fieldglass met all of our business requirements. But to be honest, as did many other tools in the market, the key thing for us, and it's the theme throughout our journey, particularly with the size of company we are, was around integration and data quality benefits of moving to a single SAP platform.
Thanks, Richard. So continuing on the journey, the past 18 months, I know has been really challenging. Well, for everyone in the industry, and I know Tullow has been no exception to that, with a huge focus on cost reduction. Tullow took the decision again to work with Accenture to look at how to make more savings, and we went down the road of looking at outsourcing of some of Tullow's core back office activities. Richard, I know you were really closely involved with the outsourcing program. It'd be really good if you could, expand and give some more details on the outsourcing journey for you, and actually, importantly, the interaction, the beneficial interaction between the fact that you had the SAP S4 application in place and the other SAP systems, and running those alongside the new way of working business operations.
Yeah, very much so. So one of the key aims of our digital journey was one of cost reduction through efficiency gains. However, for some digital programs, it's quite difficult to see how you can correlate improved processes with savings. And I suppose, I do ask myself the question, if we didn't have the oil price downturn in 2020, would we have made the cost savings as a result of what we've done in 2018 and 2019? But with the timing of the 2020 oil price downturn, and it did align with us being able to take advantage of the digital journey we'd been on through 2018 and 2019. We had refreshed process documentation, we had enable now recordings of core processes, and we'd increased the level of automation within S4. This helped us take a decision to essentially outsource all our core finance and supply chain processes, from JV accounting to accounts payable. This was all done remotely during the global pandemic in less than 12 months to an Accenture team in India. This effort was generated significant savings over the life of our outsourcing contract. Achieving this goal in this timeline during the pandemic would not have been possible had we not done the simplification to our systems landscape over the last couple of years. This also has enabled us to partner with Accenture point forwards under our application support contract to build a pipeline of S4 change initiatives. These initiatives will implement further S4 functionality to deliver further efficiencies and savings under our outsourced contract.
Thanks, Richard. And maybe now is a good time to delve a little bit more into the detail around that initial S4 HANA migration project. So if you can just go to the next slide. So I'm going to give a little bit of context in terms of delivery, and then again ask Richard some more questions from his perspective. But just starting from the beginning, we did an initial assessment and roadmap phase. And after that, the actual delivery was completed in 10 months. And this was, a real combined team effort of Tullow and the Tullow team, the Accenture team. We had Avanade supporting from a Microsoft infrastructure perspective, and SAP were key to that as well. And we managed to successfully upgrade from ECC to S4 HANA, as well as actually an upgrade of some of the surrounding application like OpenText and Vim. We also, I think Richard talked about it being a non-disruptive, but we did actually implement some new functionality, and we did have a number of Fury apps which were made available and made available through a range of devices as we had a new implementation of single sign-on. And I think it's a good point to call out that actually the prior move to public cloud really gave the project team a number of benefits across the life cycle of the upgrade program. It accelerated our timelines. We were able to take advantage of, Tullow was able to take advantage of the flexible consumption for project infrastructure. We were able to deploy HANA really quickly using scripted templates. The environments we were able to spin up quite quickly. We were able to restore backups in minutes, which was great to be able to support across the testing life cycles. Another key part of the project was that the conversion was supported end-to-end by SAP's max attention support. And I think Richard would agree with me that that max attention was critical to us having fast turnaround to any product-related queries that we had during testing. And having a dedicated SAP account manager to support us through the project to closure was really excellent. We also took the decision to integrate the existing Accenture application support team into the project team. So we were able to bring some of that existing expertise and knowledge of business process and customization into the project end to end, which I think was really helpful. And allowed us to complete in the timelines as planned. But Richard, it'd be really great to hear from you on your thoughts on how the conversion project went from a business perspective, and how Tullow finance and supply chain were involved throughout.
Sure, thanks, Nicola. I mean, I think the first thing that struck me was really the customization of our ECC system that came out in the analysis phase. We'd always sought to stick to standard vanilla, but through the conversion analysis, it personally hit home to me that we did still have a fair amount of custom code that needs to be remediated through the conversion. And I suppose it's I suppose one thing, obviously, that it was a real learning to take forwards into the future projects with success factors and the like. The next thing to take away from the design phase was, S4 brings a lot of process improvements, from fixed assets to cash management to auto reconciliations. As Nicola mentioned, we did take the benefit of some of these, and certainly the ones that we needed to take to implement. And this sort of supported a quick deployment, but I still do debate with myself, particularly from a selfish finance perspective, that it might have been good to take advantage during the conversion to implement more Fury apps and more functionality, which really, and it's the cycle of an oil and gas business, which we're only really getting to now, 2 years later. In terms of the deployment phase, the key for us was testing, testing, both from end-to-end processes and data integrity.
And I know, there's always a balance between reducing the impact and time needed from the business in any implementation project, Richard, with the desire to implement new functionality to release value straight away. And it's often, as I'm having conversations with organizations, it's often that balance. It's quite hard to decide on that balance. And I'm sure, looking back, there's some good lessons learned that you can share.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, as with any project, there were a few. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, I think it's more of a success, but the SAP max attention, providing support throughout the project was critical to support. I mean, as the first oil and gas brownfield conversion, we did run into a number of technical challenges, but we were able to work closely with both SAP and Accenture to resolve the issues without impacting timelines. And it's definitely something I'd highly recommend for those that are going to undertake this journey. The next point, we should have really agreed up front in the design phase the extent of and scope of testing. Whilst it was a brownfield conversion, we did still want to test processes end to end, and this wasn't initially built into the plan. This was partly due to our own experience in prior projects and a focus on no surprises. But reflecting on it now, did we need to test as many scenarios as we did? Probably not, but it did give me and the technical teams, more comfort. The next point's probably around the complexity of connected applications. The more embedded tools like things like OpenText and Vim, and also the tools that we use to extract data out of SAP, the project became more complicated. We definitely underestimated the complexities of not only the technical solution, but organizing multiple parties to support the project at the right points in time, whether it's cutover weekends and the like, to get the project to work. And the final point I'd mention, and it's a bit of a funny one, given we took a non-disruptive approach, and it's around change management. It became increasingly evident throughout the project that we needed to focus more on the Tullow user groups, both finance and supply chain, that were impacted. There were some quite obvious changes to things like fixed assets that I suppose we were prepared for, but some of the changes just in terms of format of screens and the just where a button might sit required training of our users. We also intended to place quite a lot of reliance on Enable Now for change management, but unfortunately, it's a bit chicken and egg with our timelines. By the time the system was built, we didn't have enough time to do all of the recordings for Enable Now to then use those scripts for training. So it's certainly a lesson that we took forward into the SuccessFactors project.
Thanks, Richard. And we're probably going to touch a little bit more on outcomes of the S4 journey, but maybe you could touch on some of the key benefits and improvements that you saw directly after the upgrade project.
Sure. I mean, as mentioned previously, the key benefit was to be able to realize cost savings from process efficiencies. It did improve the casual users' interaction with both the requisition to pay process through the Fiori apps. It also supported and enhanced the ability and speed of data analytics in key areas such as requisition to pay and joint venture. But most importantly of all, as I mentioned, it became the foundation of our future digital journey. If I'm brutally honest, if I was to poll our casual user base, what the most important improvement was, they would say single sign-on, just one less password to remember.
Thanks, Richard. Continuing on the journey, if we can just go to the next slide, let's go and focus a little bit more around the HR transformation. So Accenture worked really closely with Tullow's HR organization around the similar time that we were going through the S4 transformation, actually, to implement SAP's SuccessFactors and Fieldglass, as we talked about. The project was delivered into 14 countries, including Tullow's key locations in West Africa, all in 7 months. And part of being able to do that in 7 months is we used actually Accenture's SuccessFactors My Concerto tool, which actually gave us a starting point of a pre-configured template that helped kickstart that implementation project. And then the team delivered the solution using an agile, iterative approach to work with the business to start building in and on top to deliver as per the design. From an integration perspective to S4 and other applications in the Tullow landscape, these were all done using SAP's cloud platform integration. So Richard, clearly, you have a finance focus, but actually you were really closely involved in the governance of the SuccessFactors project. So we're actually quite close to the detail end to end. So maybe you can tell us a bit more around the delivery of the SuccessFactors program. And again, some of the benefits that you're seeing from the implementation today.
Sure. I mean, one of the key benefits certainly we're seeing now is around enhanced data quality, compliance and control. Having a single source of the truth that can really be relied upon with employee and organizational data, we're starting to really see the benefits of. But the only way, particularly with the nature of the tool, that this is possible is through user adoption, which has been mainly driven by a simpler end user experience. As such, the success and delivery of the project, I suppose, beyond the technical aspect that Nicola outlined, was effective change management, and we'll touch on that a bit later.
And in terms of lessons learned, I know right at the very beginning of the project, as an organisation, Tullow had set an objective of trying to stay with standards as much as possible. So that was the key goal. I remember being in the workshops, and it was a very much a let's take the lessons from prior, and as you talked about the customizations that you found within your S4 implementation. Maybe you could expand on that, Richard, for the SuccessFactors project and any other lessons learned that you can share.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's really tricky, and particularly sort of how we approached the project. I mean, we went out to sort of various key stakeholders to gather requirements. What we could have done a much better job with is, I suppose, framing those requirements aligned with the standard fit model better to help provide, okay, someone has a requirement, they've got a process that works a specific way for them at the moment, but being able to articulate to them, this is what the standard does and it works, and we don't need to, configure or change anything. If we'd been a bit more upfront, and then we wouldn't have had, I suppose, as much sort of loop arounds to finalize the design, which delayed the project. But also, some of the nuances that we have ended up with could potentially have been avoided. Furthermore, I think we probably could have been a bit more disciplined as a project team around defining the processes and documentation before we moved into the implementation phase. There was some rework and delays during the build, which we could have prevented. And I think the final reflection, and you've probably seen from the roadmap, we are a relatively small E&P company now, and we probably took too much on as a business in a short period of time, with S4, Concur, Fieldglass, SuccessFactors, and a bunch of other initiatives. These were projects that were delivered back to back, overlapping in aspects. And we definitely saw an element of change fatigue within the organization. But more importantly, it was probably pretty tough for our IS, finance and supply chain and HR teams, sort of having to move from project to project. But
we actually did implement as per the plan, Richard. So actually from a I know it was challenging, as projects always are along the way, but we made it. So it was good. And maybe it's a good time to move, if we move on to the next slide, to talk a little bit more around that user-driven change approach, because you've called that out quite a few times this morning, Richard, around the importance of change management, because I know that is really key to any successful technology implementation. And during the implementation programs we've just heard about, Accenture worked with the Tullow change management team quite closely to create an actual user persona based approach with the latest training and e-learning technologies, including SAP Enable Now. For those of you who are not familiar with SAP Enable Now, it is a collaborative online learning platform, and we were able to record in-system training scenarios for the Tullow users, which could then be played by them at their own pace to guide them through some of the key processes and the changes that had been made into the system. Richard, with this in mind, it'd be really helpful, I'm sure, for the audience to get a business perspective on the success of the adoption of the new systems which you're using at Tullow today.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the project was all prefaced on moving to a self-serve model, with employees and line managers owning and managing their own data. As such, getting the business on board with this change was vitally important. The Tullow and Accenture teams did a phenomenal job in this area and took some real learnings from our S4 project that I mentioned earlier. We achieved this, as Nicholas said, through a variety of methods. So training sessions, use of personas, Enable Now recording, quizzes, lunches, and probably most importantly, cake. The team really focused on building the communications up throughout the project, and post go live. It was almost impossible to move in Tullow without realizing that this change was happening, and not for people not to engage with it in some form. So post go live, the adoption of the system has been good. We saw a huge wave of data changes flow through following go live, as people were, I suppose, interacting with their data and realizing that their addresses were wrong. They wanted different bank account details or whatever it was. And we've continued to see that sort of, I suppose, pattern of changes throughout. So I suppose that's the proof that people are owning their own data and they are moving forwards with it. Just having that single source of the truth for both organization and employee data, has led us to be able to do a lot better analysis and place reliance on that data without having to triple check things manually.
Thanks, Richard. And so if we can just move to the final picture, really, which hopefully really is a picture of what's been achieved at Tullow, because the foundations in terms of all of the projects that we've talked about this morning have really been set with an upgraded ERP plus a modern business application landscape from the very bottom, which is really now starting to have benefits, because it's really future-proofed everything that Tullow are looking at to do today and tomorrow as well. And I think, Richard, this is the most exciting part of the story, really, which is, what are you doing now at Tullow? Now you've put all of these foundations in place, and what ongoing initiatives do you see on the horizon, and how will your SAP landscape be able to support this?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think we, as Nicholas said, we've got the foundation in place now, and really the focus is on further consolidation of back office and operational systems to SAP. We've really seen the benefits, say from an HR and expense management perspective, of having the integration and the same data structures flowing throughout. And we have a number of other applications that we can take forward in to move within this model. The key things where we see significant benefits coming up is, firstly, upgrading to 1909. There's a lot of additional functionality there that will create efficiencies within our processes. You're then expanding on our system integrations that we have in place. You know, we did a lot with the success factors and field glass implementation, but there's definitely more that we can do from an integration perspective. And then it's looking at I suppose the systems that are not currently on SAP. So whether it's group reporting from a consolidation perspective, CAT's time writing tool, and the big hot topic for us at the moment is plant maintenance, and obviously conversations with SAP versus Maximo. But the key thing for us really, and I think, you know, now we've got the foundation embedded, and also we have the outsource contract in place. You know, it's vitally important that any future investment that we want to make, so, you know, if I want to take to our CFO that we want to upgrade to 1909, I'll be able to tangibly take to him, okay, this is, you know, the cost of the upgrade, but then this is the significant benefits we're going to get from incremental process savings that will, you know, move into cost savings. But also, you know, people are seeing the benefit now of the better data quality, and the fact that, you know, if someone asks for some salary information by cost center, you know, it's not going to be wildly different to the data that they've got from an employee perspective, from an HR, from an employee perspective. So I think building on that point forwards is critical.
Perfect, Richard. Thank you so much for coming along this morning and sharing such a great story. It's been fantastic for me to be part, myself and the Accenture team, to be part of the journey. And I think, you know, I'm looking forward to continuing, as you talked about, to support the ongoing SAP journey with Tullow. And maybe, Peter, I can hand over to see at this point. I think we have probably 10 minutes, which is a nice amount of time. If anybody has any questions for Richard or myself, we'd be happy to take some questions from the audience.
Yeah, first of all, thanks a lot. I really like the dialogue style, and I think everybody really appreciated it, and very good illustrations. So thanks a lot for both of you. And you're right, we do not have so much time left. Let me jump into questions, and here we'll go bottom up. So one of the questions was some details about the JVA migration. Can you give a few more details on that, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I might need Nicola to help me with some of the details, but I mean, it is probably the area where we've got the most level of customization within our ECC6 system, and you know, we use the full suite of JVA applications. So all the cutbacks, all the billings, cash calls are all raised through the system. So it was, you know, vitally important that we got that to work. There wasn't a huge amount of change when we moved to 1809 in that area, but the key was, you know, how did, I suppose, the rest of the S4 impact those end-to-end processes, and it goes back to the point that I raised earlier about testing. You know, because JV is so critical to us, you know, we wanted to make sure the end-to-end processes are fully tested. So if there was something that changed in open text, how did that then get coded to the JV ledger, and how did that transaction flow through onto a billing and through to a cash call? So that's why I suppose the testing, even though there wasn't a lot of change, there was a lot of custom code remediation done. But it was the testing to give us comfort to make sure any of the upstream or downstream processes hadn't impacted our JVA processes. Nicola, is there anything to add?
Only just to say, you know, from a project perspective, obviously, you know, this was a key area, as you said, Richard. And one of the things that we did to try and mitigate some of the risk around that is we actually stood up an 1809 S4 instance. So and we had the team from our application support team who, you know, were supporting the JV processes to work with the Tullow team and to actually go hands-on into that sort of test instance through the design phase, so they could fully understand the new ways of working and fully understand as we went through that design impact assessment phase. So I think that really helped on the understanding and from a risk perspective as we went into the conversion and the test phase as well.
Thanks. Yeah. Another question revolves around, and it was raised by Kiran Kumar, around S/4HANA Cloud product maturity towards oil and gas, and what are challenges faced during this journey?
Look, I mean, it's probably a question more for Nicola. I mean, I think the key aspect for us is, I suppose, as I mentioned earlier, is around JV. You know, we've got a couple of guys from our team who are working very closely with the oil and gas consortium and helping to set out this journey. You know, we see the huge benefits of moving to the cloud version of SAP. But it is vitally important that we do have that JV functionality that we enjoy at the moment. You know, we've got very automated processes, which have got some fantastic control aspects to them, and it's one area where we don't want to erode moving to a cloud solution. So there is, I know there's a lot of work going on in that area at the moment, and it's something that as a company we're actively involved in. Yeah,
I support that comment, Richard, in terms of, back maybe when we first started looking at it, this was in development in terms of being, the cloud version being able to support some of the functionality that Tullow were looking at, but we've been, looking at that throughout, and the functionality is now there ready to support the Tullow journey going forwards.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Last question. We have 3 minutes left. Advice for companies to move to S/4HANA. Maybe to sum it up, very briefly, what are the major points you would give as advice?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think the key thing for me is around the planning and analysis phase, and I think it's being really clear about what your timeline is and what your outcome is, because ultimately that will drive what you can do through the process. As I mentioned, I wished we could have put some of the more of the functionality that is available in at the time, but we were very much focused on getting it in quickly so then we can then move on to other things. So it's really understanding the why you're doing this and what the outcome is, and that will drive then firstly the timeline, and then secondly all of the planning and analysis that needed to be done up front. And I think the big thing for me is that there's some fantastic additional functionality that's available in 1909 that we're super keen on, and obviously it would have been great to move to that, but obviously timelines permitted. Nicola? Yeah,
and I think just to exactly add to that, Richard, I think the key is to look at what you want to achieve, in the future. So, this really, the modernization that Tullow has been through is sets them up so well for the future, with all the new initiatives that are being built into the product today. Yes, you can try and build that on the outside, but why build up that technical debt? Get the modern, upgraded core platform in place, take the benefits of consolidation from a cost reduction perspective, and then actually, the opportunity is there to build on that foundation with some of the, the significant benefits, data insights, real-time data, automation capabilities that are actually now part of the core platform. But again, you need to look forward and understand what you want to achieve in the future and how a modern foundation will enable that.
With that, thanks a lot for this fantastic, really passionate dialogue style presentation, both of you. And I think that bridged very well also to the rest of the agenda. From 12:15 CET on, we will have the opportunity that you have one-to-one meetings with experts, partners, and SAP. So please pick and choose who you would like to talk to. And in the afternoon from 1 p.m. CET on, we'll have the breakout session, which one of them is dealing in detail with the S4 transformation journey. and the other one connected assets and operations. In the meantime, I probably think that that's lunchtime for you, and I wish you good appetite and see you back. Thanks a lot.
Many thanks. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.